Good Shabbos, everyone. Unfortunately, as we know, mass shootings in our country today are rampant. But as Congress returns from its summer recess to debate this all-important issue, this is not a sermon about gun control. I've given those before. Today, I want to speak about something deeper that I believe is going on that may be contributing to the rampant mass shootings we see too often in our country. It's amazing that despite the challenges our country has today, the fact is our life expectancy is longer, our medical care is better, and our choice is wider than any previous American generation has ever experienced. Yet our country is not measurably happier. The most telling example of unhappiness, drug and alcohol abuse, depressive illness, stress-related syndromes, and the rest have risen by between 300 and 1,000% in the span of 2 generations. Why is this happening? I've spoken before about the challenges women face in our day and age. But this morning, in light of the increased amount of mass shootings we see again and again done by men, I want to talk about one great challenge I believe men are facing. A few weeks ago, I was looking at the front page of the newspaper, and I found it amazing. On one side of the front page of the newspaper, it talked about how police were leaving. They were dropping. They were no longer wanting to be policemen because the pay was so bad. They couldn't earn a raise. They were barely making a living. So the police department was having a hard time finding men to serve as policemen. And on the same page, just on the other side, the headline was about an NFL star holding out of training camp because he was only offered $45 million. He wanted $50 million. So he, nevertheless, even though he was under contract, he was refusing to work. Isn't that amazing? On the same page, we have policemen not making enough to earn a living, so they're dropping out, and an NFL star not happy with $45 million. Times have changed. I remember the days when star athletes didn't make the type of money they do today. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in North Dallas, and I remember in the summers when we would go to the local Sears up the street to go shopping, and in the summers, we'd see Cowboys, Dallas Cowboy football players working at Sears in the summer, in the off-season, because they didn't make enough money during the year, so they had to supplement their income with another job in the summer. We don't see that today. When I was growing up in North Dallas, my childhood hero, and I know this is hard to say in Houston, but Dallas Cowboy football player Roger Staubach, the great football quarterback of my generation. But Roger Staubach, as famous as he was, he lived in a very modest, middle-class home right down the street from my synagogue. Half the reason my brothers and I didn't complain about having to go to services every Friday night is that we get to drive by Staubach's home. We always dreamed that maybe he'd be out there mowing his lawn and we could go over and get his autograph. We never actually saw him, but we got to go by his home every weekend, every Shabbat. Some of you know Rabbi R.A. Wolbe. He's head of Torch. He's an Orthodox rabbi here in the community who lives in the Fondren Southwest area. If you go to his home and you go out in his backyard and you look at his pool, the bottom of his pool is number 34 written in large numbers at the bottom of his pool. Why? Because he lives in the home today that Earl Campbell used to live in many years ago. Today, I don't think you'd see a star as big as Earl Campbell living in the same home that a rabbi would eventually live in. Certainly not in the Fondren Southwest neighborhood. My friends, something has become fundamentally wrong in a country where teachers, paramedics, policemen, firemen have a hard time making a living, while movie stars, rock stars, and athletes make endless amounts of money. I'm not here this morning to preach economics. I believe in the capitalist system. If that's what the market will pay them for their work, then it's their right to earn it. But here is the problem. It used to be men earned respect because of their character, by how much they contributed to society, how they were as a father or a grandfather. It seemed that respect was earned not by one's income, but by one's integrity and morality, what they gave back to their country. Recently, I was talking to one of my sons about how this past weekend Army The college football team, Army, took Michigan, one of the best teams in the country, to overtime. They lost, but they almost beat Michigan. Army had not beaten a top 10 football team since 1963. And my son was shocked when I told him that the best college football players used to go and play for colleges like Army and Navy. They were some of the best football teams in America. Then after they graduated, most of the players, even the best ones, would do their time in the armed services to get back to the country before they went and made money in the National Football League. My son thought I was joking. He couldn't fathom how the best players wouldn't get out of college as soon as possible to make their millions in the NFL. I reminded him that my childhood hero, Roger Staubach, was considered a hero not just because of what he did on the field, but because he first served not 1, 2, but 4 years of active duty service in the Navy before going pro. How often does that happen today? It rarely, if ever, happens. Is it because in our day and age, men feel the only way to gain true respect is by earning a lot of money? Not by factors like serving one's country. You almost can't blame athletes who go to the pros as quickly as they can. Think of the news programs, TV shows, Hollywood blockbusters that glorify the wealthy as the only ones who today are truly living the American dream. Think of what advertisers bombard us with on a daily basis, the pictures, the billboards, the commercials we see on TV, what we and our young see on social media. Our young boys, for them, often their modern day heroes are those football players and basketball and baseball players. They look up to them. And those players seem to have it all just because of how much money they can make. Over the last few weeks, there's been a big controversy in the NFL. Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. is insisting that during football games, he should be able to wear his designer watch that is worth $190,000. The NFL is considering banning his watch not just because of how expensive it is, but because it's so thick that it may cause injuries to other players. Regardless of which side is right, and I don't like Odell Beckham Jr., so I hope he loses that watch during a game. But regardless of which side is right, it's amazing how he's able to grab so many headlines because he can afford and wants to wear such an expensive watch. Think about how that affects our young boys who primarily just watch sports headlines. My sons do the same, and they see that an athlete can afford such an expensive watch. But it's not just our young. I see it affecting adult men as well. I see too many adult men who are led to believe that only those who have made millions have truly made it. And I believe this very narrow, very unrealistic definition of achievement robs otherwise good men of self-esteem and often makes a muddle of their broken dreams. My colleague, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, puts it best. He writes, the American male lives in a society today resembling not a circle in which all men are treated as though they possess innate value, but a triangle in which only a tiny few perched at the top and the overwhelming majority at the bottom are made to feel like they are worthless. And the message seems to be that for the majority at the bottom, since they are nowhere near the top, they have no real value. Today it seems more than ever before that only money brings respect. Only power brings prestige. So it makes sense that too many men who don't have millions in the bank look at themselves as inferior men who may be far less moral, but make a lot more money. Men in our country today are led to believe that the recognition and respect of their peers will not come from assisting their children with their homework or making a difference for complete strangers. They know that treating one's coworkers with dignity will never bring them into the Forbes 400, or reading a bedtime story to one's children will not get them any prestigious awards. As a result, too many men come home as shells, defeated creatures who don't love themselves, having bought the lie that only money matters. They become blind to their own worth. I see it too often, even at Beth Yeshurun. Recently, I had a congregant in my office. His children are doing well. They respect him. He has a wonderful wife who loves him. His business was doing okay, but good enough to help provide him a decent and honest living. But he was so depressed seeing others his age who seemed to have it all, endless amounts of money to spend on lavish vacations and expensive cars, he was considering suicide. Fortunately, he's now getting professional treatment, and God willing, he'll be okay. But I know that he's not alone. And while he's become a victim of severe depression, others commit even worse actions. Because when the feeling of rejection becomes too acute, some men are overcome by a dangerous rage, a desire to punish the society that they feel degrades them on a daily basis. I am, of course, fully aware that plenty of mass shooters are simply clinically insane and defy any cultural diagnosis. I'm not here to offer a simplistic answer to the pandemic of shootings in America, but there is a very clear trend. An overwhelming majority of them are young men who are enraged, broken, depressed, because they believe they have failed, completely lost, because they live in a society that only seems to value them if they make a lot of money. 2 weeks ago, that killer in Odessa, Texas, that 36-year-old killer had been in a downward spiral before being fired by his employer shortly before he began his shooting spree. And right after he was fired, he even called 911 to complain about his employer. He called the FBI's national tip line as well and made a rambling statement to the FBI about some of the atrocities that he felt he had gone through in America. And then he went to kill and injure dozens of innocent people. It's rare that I would ever quote Bill Maher in a sermon, but I think he actually sums it up well when he said recently, quote, "There's no shortage of reasons offered as to why America has a gun violence problem. But isn't a lot of it because America has become an every man for himself winner, take it all culture that chews up and spits out people who don't keep up? You can fly as high as you want here, but if you fall by the wayside, our response is, stinks to be you, loser." Unless we reverse the trend of making men feel like achievement machines, unless we stop making money a commodity by which males purchase self-esteem, I don't think we'll ever end the brokenness, the rage, and the insanity that are contributing to so many problems in our day and age, including, of course, the endless shootings we seem to see every single week. Is this the society that we want our children to grow up in? Can we offer a better example of what a real man should be to our young boys? Our tradition can offer some guidance. My teacher, Rabbi Brad Arton, offers the following insight. In our current book of the Torah, Devarim, we read about the laws about Israel. Our ancient ancestors were supposed to fight a holy war. And one of the provisions is before fighting begins, Moses actually instructs the officials to address the troops with the following. They must ask the troops, "Is there anyone here who has built a new house and has not dedicated yet? Let him go back to his home, lest he die in battle and another dedicate it. Is there anyone here who has planted a vineyard but has never harvested it? Let him go back to his home, lest he die and another harvest it. Is there anyone here who has become engaged but has not yet married the woman that he's engaged to? Let him go back to his home, lest he die in battle and another marry his fiancée." By any measurement, this is a remarkable standard. At the beginning of an obligatory war, soldiers who have just built a home, just planted a vineyard, or just married are told to go home. They're not even given an option. Personal needs override national interests. A supreme religious obligation like the conquest of the promised land is deemed less important than the simple acts of daily life. Home, marriage, work. The basics of one's home life are deemed most important. And I believe what the laws of the Torah suggest is a radically different notion of what it means to be a real man. Because the real man, according to the Torah, is not the great warrior or the famous movie star or the wealthy athlete. The most important man is one who is a hero, who is most admired, who is most respected at home. The real man is the devoted parent, the caring mensch, the responsible citizen, quietly shouldering the task of decency, compassion, and integrity. The ideal is when we cherish our loved ones and put them above all else. Those are considered the real 1%. It's a greatness that anyone can achieve, no matter what they do for a living. Yes, the newspapers may never report such greatness, and the television shows won't make a show about them. But the countless quiet and unnoted acts that fathers lavish on children, sons devote to parents and grandparents, and men bestow on each other are the real manly acts God desires. Because God doesn't care at all about how much money we make. And maybe we shouldn't either. Maybe we shouldn't judge someone's success by just how much money one has. As the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel once said, to have more is not necessarily to be more. Perhaps this is the lesson every bar mitzvah boy should take home with him. No, you and I alone cannot end the senseless shootings we see way too often. But if we can start reminding men who are suffering out there what really makes someone truly important, maybe we can make a difference. Shabbat shalom, everyone.